Napoleon Hill straightened his shoulders, adjusted his worn collar, and walked into the steel magnate's office as if he belonged there, despite having only $3 in his pocket and a reputation as nothing more than a small-town reporter. Andrew Carnegie looked up from his massive mahogany desk, studying the young man who carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had already achieved greatness. Hill would later call this moment the turning point that changed everything, not because of what happened in that room, but because of who he had decided to become before walking into it. 3 months earlier, Hill had been a different man entirely. At 25, he was trapped in the suffocating grip of self-doubt, working as a struggling journalist in rural Virginia, watching more successful men from the sidelines and wondering why greatness seemed reserved for everyone except him. The transformation began on a rain-soaked evening when Hill found himself staring at his reflection in a shop window. The man looking back was stooped, uncertain, carrying himself like someone who expected rejection. In that moment, Hill made a decision that would reshape his entire destiny. He would stop acting like someone who hoped to become successful and start acting like someone who already was. The way you think, the way you behave, the way you eat can influence your life by 30 to 50 years, Hill would later write, but that night he made an even more radical discovery: the way you act shapes who you become almost instantly. Hill went home and conducted what he called the success experiment. He stood before his mirror and asked himself a simple but powerful question: how would Napoleon Hill act if he were already the most respected authority on success in America? The answer came immediately: that Napoleon Hill would stand taller. He would speak with certainty rather than hesitation. He would ask better questions and expect meaningful answers. He would prepare more thoroughly and show up with the energy of someone whose time was valuable. Most importantly, that Napoleon Hill would believe he belonged in rooms with the most successful people in the world. Not as a desperate interviewer seeking scraps of wisdom, but as an equal seeking to understand and share principles that could help humanity. Hill began practicing this new identity in every interaction. When he walked into the local bank, he didn't shuffle in hoping they wouldn't notice his overdrawn account. He strode in with the bearing of someone who would one day teach others about financial success. When he wrote letters to potential interview subjects, he didn't beg for their time. He presented opportunities for them to share their wisdom with someone worthy of receiving it. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve became more than a philosophy for Hill. It became a daily practice of embodiment. The changes were subtle at first, but profound. Hill noticed that when he acted like a successful author, people began treating him like one. When he carried himself with confidence, others responded with respect. When he spoke with authority about principles he was still learning, people listened as if he were already an expert. The real test came when Hill decided to pursue an interview with Andrew Carnegie, the wealthiest man in America. The old Hill would have sent a timid letter hoping for a miraculous response. The new Hill, the one who had been practicing success daily, approached the opportunity differently. Hill spent 2 weeks preparing not just questions, but preparing himself. He studied Carnegie's business philosophy, read every article about his success, and most importantly, he prepared his mindset. Hill didn't just hope for an interview, he visualized it, felt it, and acted as if it were already scheduled. When Hill wrote to Carnegie, his letter didn't sound like a desperate journalist seeking a favor. It read like a respected peer offering an opportunity for Carnegie to share his wisdom with someone who would honor it properly. The difference in energy was palpable, and Carnegie agreed to meet. But Hill's real breakthrough came in the hours before that meeting. Instead of pacing nervously or rehearsing desperate talking points, Hill did something radical. He acted exactly as he would if he were already a successful author meeting with a fellow titan of industry. Hill dressed in his best clothes, stood tall, breathed deeply, and entered Carnegie's office with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged there. He didn't act like a fan meeting a celebrity, he acted like a professional conducting important research. Most great people have attained their greatest success just one step beyond their greatest failure. Hill would later write, but in that office, he was demonstrating something even more powerful. Success begins the moment you start acting like you've already achieved it. Carnegie was immediately impressed, not just by Hill's questions, but by his presence. Here was a young man who carried himself like someone destined for greatness. When Carnegie challenged Hill to spend 20 years studying successful people and writing about their principles, with no guarantee of payment, Hill didn't hesitate. The old Hill would have been devastated by the lack of immediate financial reward. The new Hill, who had been acting like a successful author for months, saw the opportunity for what it was, the chance to do exactly what he had been preparing for. "I can accept your challenge," Hill replied with quiet certainty, "because I believe this work will benefit humanity, and that belief gives me all the payment I need to begin." Carnegie later told associates that he knew Hill would succeed the moment he walked into the room, not because of his credentials, but because of how he carried himself. Hill had the bearing of someone who had already achieved what he was setting out to accomplish. Over the next 20 years, Hill continued to embody the success he was studying. When he interviewed Thomas Edison, he didn't act like a starstruck journalist, he acted like a fellow innovator seeking to understand the principles of invention. When he met Henry Ford, he didn't act like an outsider looking in, he acted like someone who belonged in conversations about achievement and success. This wasn't arrogance or pretense, it was the power of aligned identity. Hill had discovered that when you act like the person you're becoming, you accelerate the process of becoming that person. Your thoughts align with your actions align with your identity, and your identity attracts the opportunities that make success inevitable. Success comes to those who become success-conscious, Hill would teach, but he learned this principle by living it first. Every day he made choices based not on who he had been, but on who he was becoming. When Hill finally published Think and Grow Rich, he wasn't surprised by its massive success. He had been acting like a best-selling author for decades. When people sought his advice on achievement, he wasn't shocked by his influence, he had been carrying himself like a mentor for years. Hill's story became proof of his own teaching. You don't need to wait until you achieve success to start acting successful. In fact, acting successful is often the fastest path to achieving success. The young man who had once stared at his reflection with doubt had become someone who helped millions of others see their own potential. But the real magic wasn't in Hill's eventual achievements, it was in the moment he decided to stop acting like someone who hoped to succeed and start acting like someone who already had. Hill's transformation revealed a profound truth: confidence isn't the result of success, it's the cause of it. When you align your identity with your aspirations, when you act like the person you're becoming rather than the person you've been, you create a magnetic field that draws opportunities, resources, and people into your life. The starting point of all achievement is desire, but the acceleration point is acting as if achievement is already yours. Hill discovered through his own experience. Years later, when people would ask Hill about the secret to his remarkable transformation, he would tell them about the night he decided to stop waiting to become successful and started acting as if he already was. He would explain that belief without embodiment is just wishful thinking, but belief expressed through action becomes destiny. As Napoleon Hill proved through his extraordinary journey, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, but only when the body acts as if the mind's conception is already reality. Stop waiting for permission to act successful. Stop postponing confidence until you have credentials. Stop carrying yourself like someone who hopes to make it instead of someone who's already on their way. Your future self is calling you to step into their shoes today. Walk taller, speak with authority, make decisions from abundance, and watch how quickly the world begins treating you like the success you're already becoming. The person you're meant to be is waiting for you to start acting like them, starting right now.